Welcome to The Lantern. To all of you watching in Nigeria and around the world, I am Babajide Ogunsanwo. Tonight, we focus on the new national security strategy of the United States. What are the implications on Nigeria and the rest of the world? What does the United States want to do about Russia? What does Russia want to do about China? And what does China want to do about Africa? What role does Nigeria play in this game of chess? Later on the show, I will take a look at the state of the race to Nigeria's 2023 general elections. But first things first. Half a decade ago, Nigeria adopted a policy framework and national action plan for preventing and countering violent extremism. 2 years after adopting this framework, the Nigerian government released a national security strategy in 2019. Earlier this year, the leadership of Nigeria's armed forces released its national military strategy. 3 documents, but all 3 point to one thing: how Nigeria's institutions are preparing to manage the security threats of today and tomorrow. In these papers, the philosophy of Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Rabo, is clear: effectiveness and efficiency, capacity and capabilities. The armed forces will protect one Nigeria. The armed forces will sustain collaboration with its regional partners, reduce dependency on foreign technologies, and upgrade all military systems. This includes joint operations. Though General Lucky Rabo's vision for the military is sharp, there is a mountain that could blur his sight. Let me explain. On one hand, in the most recent survey by the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, 20 million Nigerian children are out of school, the highest in sub-Saharan Africa. On the other hand, the most recent global terrorism report by the Institute for Economics and Peace reveals that sub-Saharan Africa emerged as the global epicenter of terrorism. 2 different institutions, 2 independent reports, but one thing they have in common: warnings about sub-Saharan Africa. Nigeria has the largest population and economy in sub-Saharan Africa. Put both reports together, the summary is: the military cannot end terrorism if children keep staying out of school. Children who stay out of school do not stay out of trouble. Again, let me make myself clear. Majority of out-of-school children in sub-Saharan Africa live in northern Nigeria. Majority of all terrorism-related incidents in sub-Saharan Africa are in northern Nigeria. Do you think this correlation is simply a coincidence? By no stretch of the imagination am I saying that out-of-school children is the cause of terrorism. What I am saying is that out-of-school children is a major employment portal for terror organizations. So, Nigeria, Africa, you cannot stop terrorism if children keep staying out of school. My conclusion: Nigeria's national military strategy is good, but Africa's out-of-school children reduction strategy is bad. So what can Nigeria do? Number 1, more investment needs to go into training and retraining persons on how to keep proper school attendance records. Number 2, make Nigeria's childbirth register and census reliable. Third and final, the federal government must get the states and the local governments to develop more effective education policies and programs that improve English literacy, especially among women and female children. Nigeria needs to use any or a combination of these methods to reduce its rising numbers of out-of-school children. More than ever, the country needs to put this on its priority list and act now. Why? The United Nations report says in 1999, Nigeria had 13 million out-of-school children. By 2015, 16 million out-of-school children. Now, 20 million out-of-school children. Please listen carefully to this. Bimpe, Alima, Shade, Ekene, Mohammed. If I were to keep calling the names of all out-of-school children in Nigeria, it will take me 6 months to finish. Now to the United States. Their security headache is certainly not its out-of-school children. The migraine the United States suffers today is caused by Russia and China. Earlier this month, the United States released a program about its national security direction. Though it was only a 48-page document, Russia had more than 70 mentions. The United States' Cold War with Russia may have ended 3 decades ago, but it has now begun a new, though unofficial war with Russia, the Ukrainian Gambit. The United States also sees Asia's playmaker, China, as a long-term threat to America's global dominance. We will take a break here to look at some of the pictures of the week. But when we return, I will analyze the security strategy of the United States, Russia, China, and its implications on Nigeria. Welcome back to The Lantern. We begin tonight's analysis with the words of one of the pioneers of reggae, Robert Nesta Marley. You probably know him by his popular name, Bob Marley. So much trouble in the world. In 1979, at a time when there were no significant threats of nuclear attacks, no epidemic, no pandemic, and no global leadership disorder, Bob Marley felt that there was still so much trouble in the world. So, what should be today's song? COVID-19, climate change, disruptions, floods, hurricanes, famine, global rise in the cost of living, falling democracies, the rise of coups, the fall of morals, the attempt to silence the truth. Let's not forget how we got here. America's national security strategy, Russia, China, and how all these affect you. Russia and the United States have been at war for more than a century. A war that some historians not only say never ended, but it's still at its beginning. A war that has its roots in the struggle for territory control, land, air, sea. A war about global leadership influence, natural resources, people, culture, oil, gas. A war on military technology, a war on media influence. Whose voice will be heard the most? Who controls the narrative? A war above all caused by mistrust. Last year, Russian President Vladimir Putin launched his country's national military strategy. This was the third military strategy from the Kremlin in the last 12 years. The summary of Russia's national military strategy is that it will go to any extent to preserve its people and their potential. Russia says it is ready to go alone unless there is need for collaboration. Russia's priorities are the defense of traditional Russian values, developing national technologies and scientific development to support its people. Russia aims at self-sufficiency. Of course, Russia believes that confrontation with the West and its allies is here to stay. But despite all its battles, Russia remains confident that it will win. Why? You see, Russia, at approximately 17 million square kilometers, is the largest country in the world. Russia has the world's largest natural gas reserve, and so far, an impenetrable leadership order. Russia has spies everywhere. It knows who is doing what, where, and why. Russia has nuclear powers. And finally, Russia has a friend called China. China has the world's largest population. China has the world's second largest economy in the world. China has nuclear weapons. But the real strategic advantage that Russia really has with China is that China has 24 countries around its borders. From Mao Zedong to Xi Jinping, China's leaders has maintained close ties with all these 24 neighbors. The United States has only 2 countries at its borders, Mexico and Canada. Like Russia, China's military strategy focuses on the Chinese nation, rejuvenation, the Chinese army, strengthening of the Chinese Communist Party, the growth and welfare for the Chinese, and of course, averting risks, especially directly or indirectly from the US and its allies. Though Russia and China's national military documents were written in different languages, both documents have so much in common, you would think they were written by the same author. The summary: Russia, China do not see the United States as a partner. The United States does not see them as allies. So, on the 5th of this month, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, including Russia, agreed to cut off 2 million barrels of crude oil from global oil supply. This decision from Nigeria, other members of OPEC, Russia, made President Biden of the United States cry. The White House released a teary statement saying the decision of OPEC and Russia was short-sighted. The week after this decision by OPEC, the United States then released its national security strategy. In this document, it renewed an offensive towards Russia and China. And then, 2 weeks after, the United States advised its diplomats to reconsider travel to Nigeria, leave Nigeria over what it claims to be its own security warnings. But was this warning really about the state of security in Nigeria? Or was it about the decision Nigeria and other members of OPEC took 3 weeks ago? How does OPEC's decision affect the United States? OPEC's crude oil volume cut aims at higher oil prices. Higher oil prices means Russia, an enemy of the United States, will have more money. You see, Russia having more money means it will be able to sustain its economy and the war in Ukraine. Also, crude oil volume cut means higher gasoline, energy prices to US consumers. This means higher cost of living for millions of families living in the United States. And then, higher cost of living will slow down consumer spending and weaken demand for products and services in the United States. This is almost guaranteed to push the United States down the hill of recession. All of these will negatively affect the chance of President Joe Biden and the Democratic Party to win the next presidential election in 2024. So, do not be fooled about the latest warnings from the United States about the state of peace in Nigeria. Just as a table can never stand on a leg, every stance the United States government takes has many legs. America also has warnings for citizens of the world. Climate effects and humanitarian emergencies will only worsen in the years ahead. Droughts and deadly temperatures in sub-Saharan Africa. The question now is, what will be Nigeria's foreign policy stance to the United States and to China? Putting it all together, the military security strategy of the United States, Russia, China, and Nigeria have something in common: the national interest of its citizens and territory protection comes first. The difference is how each country wants to achieve these. In simple terms, we are still living in a world where the enemy of your friend is your enemy. The enemy of your enemy is your friend, and the friend of your enemy is your enemy. In the evolving world order, Nigeria has to now choose carefully its friends and its enemies. We will take a break here to listen to the voice of the common. But when we return, I will take a look at the state of the race to the 2023 general elections.
We are in a bad condition. Tell the Babylon them. They are Babylon of the government, they are Babylon. But it's only Jah, the creator of heaven and earth, that will save you in their hand,
This is the Voice of the Common, where we ask Nigerians questions about their thoughts and perspectives on the state and affairs of the nation.
Àwọn tó lè ṣiṣẹ́ yẹn ò ju state government lọ because àwọn náà wà responsible láti ṣe iṣẹ́ yẹn gẹ́gẹ́ bí iṣẹ́.
Now the local now, look at the try. Look at the try. In the local government and they try for the youth. But state government, they try and the federal, they are not trying. I saw it for man and God. The local they try is the local.
So you think that the local government is more responsible?
More responsible, because if we talk about the federal, they are not responsible, because they are not doing anything. I know it's coming from the federal. Before they will meet state, from state they will go local. But the local, they use their own money, because they don't say anything we want to solve. In as much as the local and the youth, now they don't go first attack. So they use their own money, they feature the youth.
The federal government. Because Nigeria as a whole, we run on a federalism system. So I think the federal government should be the primary. I think the federal government should be responsible for the safety and security of the country at large.
Yes. The federal government is in charge of both the local and then the state.
Okay, first of all, I think it should be a joint effort by these three tiers of government you've mentioned. But yes, the closest or the one that should be, paramount should be the local government, I think, because they are closer to us. They know what we go through in the economy. Every local government area have what is peculiar to them when it comes to security. So I feel it should start with the grassroots, and then federal government, state government should also be involved as well.
State government.
State government.
Because state government that is in charge of is it the area or something? Is it federal government that is? What is the state government that is close to us, you understand?
Well, generally, I think it's the federal government, but down to the lower level, it's actually the local government's, duty. But I think if the federal government actually make laws stipulating that the local government really take charge of the security in, its section, I think the federal government to an extent has, a greater role to play by enforcing local governments to actually work on the security around their local government. So it should be basically the federal and the local government. They need to be an understanding, working together with two.
Federal. Tó ṣẹlẹ̀ ni pé federal yẹn òun ló ń ṣalákòóso gbogbogbò. Òun ló ń ṣalákòóso gbogbo tó jẹ́ orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà òun ni. So ó gbọ́dọ̀ security wa.
Welcome back. Just before we take a look at the state of the race, let's first take a look at the top 10 biggest stories of this week.
These are the top 10 stories in Nigeria this week. At number 10, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, fixes November 2023 for governorship elections in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states. The Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, reveals she is 43% Nigerian. The Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises reports that over 600,000 micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises were shut down in 2021. Senate President Ahmed Lawan says that the National Assembly does not have sufficient powers to fight corruption and wasteful expenditure. According to the Nigerian Medical Association, over 10,000 Nigerian doctors are practicing in the United Kingdom. Court orders final forfeiture of Diziani's Abuja houses, cars, and other properties. President Buhari instructs the Minister of Water Resources to come up with flood prevention plan in 90 days. Court of Appeal stops execution of judgment to release Nnamdi Kanu. The federal government of Nigeria debunks terror alert by foreign embassies, saying they are unverified, misleading, and are based on other interests. For the number one story in Nigeria this week, Minister of Finance says the Ministry of Finance is not part of the plan of Central Bank to redesign the Naira notes. And these are the top 10 stories for the week. Thank you for listening.
Tonight, on the state of the race, our attention is on which regions have the most influence on who will become Nigeria's next president. Please listen carefully as I analyze the election trends in the last 3 presidential elections, 2011, 2015, and 2019. I will analyze 2 vital trends. The first, which regions have the most registered voters? The Northwest. You see, the Northwest is top of the ladder in total registered voters in Nigeria. And since 2011, no other region has reported more registered voters than the 7 states in Nigeria's Northwest region. Let me make myself clear. 1 out of every 4 names that are on Nigeria's voters register are from the Northwest. During the last 2 elections, Nigeria's South-South and Southeast regions have grown in terms of their share of this registered to vote election database. Names from the Southeast are still the least in INEC's database. Now, the second question. Which regions do people actually come out to vote? The answer? By far the northern region. For instance, in 2011, though 57% of Nigerians who registered to vote were from the northern region, on election day, 58% of those that voted were from the north. Then in 2015, though 54% of Nigerians who registered to vote were from the northern region, on election day, 57% of those who voted were from the northern region. And then in 2019, though 54% of Nigerians who registered to vote were from the northern region, on election day, 64% of those that voted were from the north. And for 2023, INEC has now said that 54% of Nigerians who have registered to vote are from the northern region. What do you think will happen on election day next year? The summary. In Nigeria's last 3 presidential elections, majority of citizens who have registered to vote were from the north. Majority of those who participated in election day were from the north. From the analysis, northern Nigeria has the most influence on who will become Nigeria's next president. And when I say northern Nigeria, by far the most dominant region is the northwest region. A win in the northwest is a necessary but not sufficient condition to become Nigeria's next president. The question is, has any candidate won Nigeria's presidential election without winning the northwest? We will find out next week. Thanks to all of you for being a part of tonight's show. God bless you, and I'll see you same time next week Sunday.